I've been in church services before. We've talked about relationships, and all of a sudden, those that are 11 and 12 go, "Oh, it's not for me. Sermon's not for me." No, it is for you. 8, 10 years' time, you need to know how to be a good husband or a good wife. There are those might be in their 50s and 60s, or maybe they've lost a spouse, and the pastor begins to speak about marriage and relationships. They go, "It's not for me." Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Because there are people that need to know what you can impart to them in your community around you. And who knows what God's got ahead for you in relationships too. So if you're single this morning, at whatever age you are, I still believe this word's for you. And it's taken out of the book of Ephesians, chapter 5, verse 33. But let me just give you a heads up as to why we're looking at this one verse this morning. A couple of months ago, I met with the elders, and I said to the elders, "Look, I've got things on my heart to preach, but what do you think the church needs? Are there any topics that you want us to cover in the teaching of the church?" And one of the elders said to me, "Look, there's a lot of young married couples in the church family. Can you do a couple of sermons on marriage?" Now, I heard that, and I had a mixed reaction. I'm passionate about doing pre-marriage counselling and marriage counselling, and I've learnt the hard way through life experiences from my mistakes. I've been to seminars, I've read books. I'm passionate about it. But I've preached Ephesians 5 lots of times. I've preached all the marriage passages lots of times at weddings and in church, and I thought, "Gosh, God, what am I going to say? What am I going to say?" This godly elder says we need some teaching on marriage. What can I say that's new that I can get really excited about? I was at Mana Bookstore shortly after that, just walking around the shop, praying about the things on my head and my spirit that God was saying to preach about. And one book stood out to me. And it's this book here called Love and Respect by Dr. Emerson Eggerichs. I won't say that surname again today. Dr. Emerson, we'll call him. And this stood out to me. And it's interesting because I've done lots of seminars and read lots of books on marriage. And I don't think I've come across one that focuses on the issue that men need respect before. How simple is that? How profound is that? And so that whole word respect stood out. And I remember looking at different families and situations down through the years where maybe a teenager would play up. And when that teenager was rude to mum and dad, mum would be hurt, but dad would be tended to find it much more difficult. Because when a man's respect is challenged, that becomes harder for the bloke. Much, much harder. So I picked up the book, not knowing what was in it, but praying like mad it was going to help me. And I found as I read it over the last couple of weeks, there's some brilliant insights, incredibly practical, that will enrich our marriages present and future if you're single at the moment, that are worth looking at. Respect is a key word for a healthy marriage. Now his proposition in this book, if I were to summarise the message in 2 sentences, it would be this. In marriage, a woman's basic need is to feel loved, whereas a man's basic need is to be respected. A man needs to give unconditional love to his wife, and a wife needs to give unconditional respect to a husband. Interesting. I mean, how many times have we talked about unconditional love in church and in Christianity? But how often have we heard unconditional respect as being something God would say to the ladies of this world to give to their other halves? Ephesians chapter 5, verse 33. So each husband should love his wife as much as he loves himself. And each wife should respect her husband. And when Dr. Emerson looked at that text and spent time researching the scriptures and praying, he said there are 2 ingredients here that are profoundly important and a needs. For the woman, a lady needs to feel loved. For a man, he needs to feel respected. It's a need. Now, there are thousands of books on marriage I've seen out there in the society. Good ones and bad ones, and a heap of them say men try and get more mushy and emotional and be more like your wife. And I think that's crazy. God didn't make men to be women. He made men to be men. He made women to be women. They're both good, but they're different. And I like this book because it doesn't say, men, try and be like your wife. It says, wives, be like wives. Men, be like men. And that's the pattern God's given. But there are 2 basic needs. Men need respect, women need love. Now, if you haven't heard that the male's desire is to be respected, there are 2 surveys done in America, both of about 1,000 people, 1,000 men. And in both surveys, the question was asked, men, husbands, dads, older teenage guys, in your relationships, what would you desire most? So you want both of these things, but which would you like most? Love or respect? Over 85% of the men came back and said, what we want most from our girls, from our families, is respect. Interesting. over 85% in both surveys said, what we want most is respect. A man is commanded to love his wife because even though our wives are wired to show love and want to be loved, men aren't quite so good at doing it. And so we're told you need to show love. Be loving to your wives. And I wonder in the same way if the women in this passage are commanded to respect their husbands because women are not quite so well wired to show respect. Men know about it. Men go to war and they'll die for their mates out of respect and honour for their mates. That, you know, when you read the scripture in Ephesians 5, it says, husbands, be willing to die for your wives. We read that, I read that, and I go, that's common sense. Of course I'd die for my wife. Of course I'd die for my kids. That's just what you do. That's what how you think as a man. But women aren't quite wired exactly the same way. So a man is told, love your wife. Why? Because it doesn't quite come quite so naturally in what she needs for love. And women are told to respect their husbands. Why? Because that part of a marriage doesn't come quite so naturally, as easily for a lady as it does for a bloke. When a husband feels disrespected, it's especially hard to love his wife. When a wife feels unloved, it's especially hard to respect their husband. In fact, when a man feels disrespected in a relationship, he's got this natural tendency to struggle to find words and to withdraw from the relationship. You know, most men, when you're singing, I'm not being respected, I'm not being treated with dignity here, are going to go quiet and going to try and find the door or some way of getting out of the room. They just back off. When a woman feels unloved, she's likely to get angry and has a natural tendency to react in ways that makes the man feel disrespected. And so it makes sense that God commanded men to love their wives and wives to respect their husbands. To quote Dr. Emerson, when a woman feels unloved, a wife's usual approach is to complain and criticize in order to motivate her husband. Now, I know that doesn't happen here, but we're talking general terms here. When a woman feels unloved, a wife's usual approach is to complain and criticize in order to motivate her husband to become more loving. This usually proves as successful as trying to sell knuckle busters to Mother Teresa. So she wants to be loved. So she gets all emotional and stressed and a bit angry about it, and it just doesn't work because in the same time, he's not feeling respected. Every wife wants her husband to appreciate how much she loves him, and she yearns to feel more love from him. The best way to love a husband is to show him respect in ways that are meaningful to him. Such respects let him feel his wife's love for him and ignites in him feelings of love for his wife. Without love, she reacts. Without respect, he reacts. And the crazy cycle begins. Now, if you look in your newsletter, there's this diagram of how it works in most marriages, at least at some times, and some marriages far too often, or some relationships far too often. You know, there's a problem, and the lady has got a heart to be connected to her husband to keep things right. She goes to the husband and she begins to say to her husband, look, this isn't right. You should be doing this. We should be doing that. This needs to get sorted. The husband is listening to that genuine concern, motivated by her love and a need to be right with her husband. He hears that and he goes, crikey, she's getting all stressed. She's getting all emo at me, you know, and look at her face and hear those couple of words she just used. And he feels disrespected. So what does he do? He thinks, oh, I'm feeling disrespected. I want to go quiet. In fact, I don't know what to say. And he wants to back out of there. She looks at him going quiet and backing out and think, what an unloving man. Why isn't he sharing his feelings? Why is he going quiet? Why is he wanting to back out of the room and leave the room? And the cycle goes around and round and around. Now, if he's foolish enough to belittle her or make a joke of it, he's really in trouble. You know, and that going out of the room, men often think, if I just leave the room, she'll calm down, we'll talk rationally later on. To a lady, that's often interpreted as an act of war or hostility, to leave the room in the midst of an argument or in the midst of trying to get something solved. And so you see how the cycle works. One's thinking, I'm not loved, so we'll talk. He's thinking, crikey, she's talking to me in a way that doesn't make me feel respected. So he responds in a way which isn't loving, which makes her more stressed, and round it goes. And that's the way it works in most relationships, at least at times. And it's not the way God wants for us, for you and I as Christians. In fact, I am absolutely sure God's given us the tools to break that crazy kind of cycle we see in society. Two things are needed in order for her to feel security, for her to feel loved, and for him to be respected, is to work on those two issues, love and respect. Dr. Gottman, John Gottman, spent 20 years researching marriages. He looked at people who'd been married for 40 years and had happy marriages. And he studied all these marriages, people happily married for 40 plus years. He discovered in their conversations they had one thing in common. The way they spoke to each other involved love and respect in all of them. So that's a common thing. There are different cultures, different socioeconomic levels. Some had money, some didn't have money, some were short and tall, everything. But this was common. When husband spoke to wife, there was love. When wife spoke to husband, there was respect. That was a common element he found in all the marriages he studied. Right or wrong, men interpret their world through the respect grid. And a wife's softened tone and facial expressions can do more for a marriage than she could ever imagine. I think communication in marriage is further complicated by the way that we communicate and hear things differently. In the book he talks about men see blue and they hear blue, and women see pink and they hear pink. It's exactly right. Think about it for a moment. When men make a comment, it will mean something different to their wives than what he originally intended, and vice versa. I was thinking about Cherie's boy, Justin Pateman, when he was about 12 years old. He saw me after church one day and said, "Pastor, you really poor?" I said, "No, I'm not really poor, Justin." He said, "But you wear the same clothes every week, you know." And I thought, you know what, that's funny, because I do wear the same clothes every week. I've probably got 3 changes of clothes, and that's what I wear and wear till they're worn out, because I'm happy with that. Now, if I say to somebody, "I've got no clothes to wear," what's that mean? It means my 3 preferred changes of clothes that I like to wear are probably in the laundry. Okay, that's what it means. Heaps of clothes, you know, but that's what it probably means. If a lady says, "I've got nothing to wear," it doesn't mean the clothes are in the laundry. It means she hasn't got something particularly comfortable for that particular occasion, or she hasn't got something new. They say the same things. "I've got nothing to wear." They mean totally different things. When a lady says to her husband, "Hubby, we need to talk, we've got issues, we've got to get it sorted out," she's thinking, "My whole world's affected by your love for me. I'm so in love with you, matey. I want to hear those words from you. I want to feel close to you. I can't let this problem rest there because I want to spend time with you. I want to get it right." He's thinking, "Crikey, she's getting all stressed and emotional and her face is looking angry," and he's interpreting what she's saying, motivated by love, as being disrespectful, as being dishonoring. So what does he do? He responds in such a way that she interprets as being unloving, and around the crazy cycle goes. Interesting with me, and I was thinking about this during the week, most men compartmentalise life. A lady can't do that, guys. When a woman feels stressed or upset about a relationship with a husband, her whole world isn't right. When something is wrong in a marriage for a man, it's stressful, it's concerning, but we compartmentalise that, because if the house is okay and the job's okay and things at sport are okay, it's still bad, but it's not as bad. You know what I mean? And so when our wives come to us, or our girls, our people we're dating come to us and say, "I got an issue, we're going to get it sorted." Guys, it's so important we hang in there and weather the storms, because they need it. They absolutely need it, because unless you do, she will never feel that security and love that she's absolutely hungering for. Why is she getting emotional? Because she needs to be loved. That's what she's really saying. You may not interpret it that way. You see blue, you hear blue, she sees pink and hears pink. But that's what's really going on. The thing I'm amazed about this book is he says that love should be unconditional and respect should be unconditional. Isn't that interesting? I mean, I've heard, how many times have we heard people preach unconditional love? Millions of times, it seems. It's agape. It's that love that gives and never stops giving. It's throughout the Bible. But in the same way that a man needs to love his wife unconditionally, he would suggest, and I think he's right, that a woman needs to hear respect. A man needs to hear respect, from his wife unconditionally. It's not like trust. If you lose someone's trust, you've got to earn that trust back. But he would say, biblically, the Christian woman is commanded to respect her husband. He needs it. In the same way that she needs his love. There's a command to love, a command to respect. Unconditional love, we're comfortable with that. Unconditional respect, that sounds a bit different. How do we think about that? But that is what the Bible teaches. After 30 years of marriage counselling and pastoring, Dr. Emerson concludes that when a husband receives unconditional respect from his wife, those fond feelings of affection will return. And he will start giving her the kind of love she has always hoped to receive. Do you hear that? Incredible. When that crazy cycle is broken by the wife, the woman showing respect to her husband, the love begins to follow as well that she needs. I want to suggest to you 3 things that can break the crazy cycle this morning. when it comes up in your marriage. Now, hopefully it only happens once a year, or once every 2 years. But when it comes up, you need to be able to break the crazy cycle of misinterpreting each other. And my needs aren't being met, so I go and approach him, and he goes, crikey, I'm not being respected, and around it goes, around it goes. When it happens, and it will happen to all of us at times, particularly when you're tired, particularly when the finance isn't so plush, what do you do to break that crazy cycle? Number one, assume the best of your spouse. Assume the best of your spouse. It's interesting, we would trust our husbands and wives to look after the kids, even when we're not there. So what are we intuitively saying? We're saying we have a love for this person, and we trust them to look after that which is most dear to us. So there is a trust, there is a respect. And so we should assume the very best of our spouse. It might be that he's wired to provide and to protect and to get out there and achieve goals and conquer challenges. It might be that he's not such a good communicator. And it might be that she's a much better communicator. But in our heart of hearts, we need to assume the best of that person that we're married to. If she raises her voice or distorts her face or says things that make you feel like mud, it's usually because she's desperate for your love, and she has a desperate desire to be connected to you. She may not always go about it the right way, but assume the best of her. And ladies, if he's foolish enough to tease you or to try and make a joke out of the situation, that's really important to you. If he goes silent, give him the benefit of the doubt, because blokes in this culture have been raised to not show emotion, to just weather the storms. And blokes in our culture are not so wired to share emotion with their spouses. Assume the best of each other. Ultimately, you both want the marriage to work and the family to be happy. Number two, forgive each other and have those love and respect conversations before you go to sleep. The Lord said the most wonderful thing when he said, don't let the sun go down on your anger. Oh, she's hurt me. Oh, I want to go to the other room, go to the garage. Oh, he's not talking. He's a thoughtless, heartless person. He's not listening to me. What do? You make sure that your love for God, before the day's finished, you take the initiative to go and minister to the other person's needs, to forgive them. And maybe you've only been 5% wrong. Say, I'm sorry, and put it right, to minister to their needs, to show that love, to show that respect before the day is finished. I believe that takes strength and that takes courage. Number three, be strong. Ladies, ask yourself this question when you need to sort out an issue with your husband. Is what I'm saying and how I am saying it respectful to my husband? Husbands, before you respond to your wives, ask yourself, does my response demonstrate the love that she needs right now? So there's no place for sarcasm. There's no place for jokes. One of the ways our wives are not like us is this whole inability to compartmentalize. And that's a good thing. God made them that way. So when they're upset and they want to sort out an issue, that becomes our priority. And it has to be at that point. I would suggest to the men who are in a situation where maybe people are tired, maybe there's stress with the kids, and they hit that situation where the one that they love, the one they would die for, is letting them have it, and they get an earful. I would suggest to men, that's when we need to man up. That's when we need to stand exactly where we are and let them all float and let them see that we're listening to what they're saying. Then we need to rush in and say we love them and give them a hug. It is not manly to leave the room. It is not manly to cut them short or belittle the issue and try and make simple of it or make light of it. The manly thing is to take the bullets, to stand in the storm because you love them, because you're willing to die for them, and minister to her need, to be loved and be assured of that love. Dr. Emerson recounts the story of a Christian man that spent a short time in prison. He'd read the scripture, husbands love your wives as Christ loved the church. And when he read that word, this is what he began to think and feel in the spirit, what God began to say to him. He writes to Dr. Emerson, for 2 days, God replayed the memories I had of our arguments. And each one I was acutely aware of how I'd failed to love my wife. It was like pausing a video and having someone point to it and say, see there? You could have reached out to her, but you were too busy trying to prove your point. At one point, I was seeing her face, all distorted with rage, as she screamed at me, but today, totally without any sound. The mute button had been pushed on this memory. And then little by little, the sound came up, so I could hear it. Only the words were not what my wife was screaming at me, Instead, they were replaced with other words that I needed to hear. I want you to love me. Why won't you love me? I'm afraid and insecure, and I need you to hold me and to love me. And that's when I began to weep. All this time I've been so totally wrapped up in my own needs, the demand for respect, to be right at any cost, to win a petty argument. This hurt our precious relationship. I've been so caught up with the words that I totally missed her heart and her need. Now this book is full of testimonies of people who said, you know what, I'm just going to, because it's right, because God said so. I'm going to love my wife unconditionally. I'm just going to respect my husband unconditionally. Whether they deserve it or not, I'm going to do it supernaturally. And there are lots of stories in there, but I've just chosen 2 testimonies for you, real simple and practical ones. This lady wrote to Dr. Emerson, I wrote to my husband 2 letters about why I respected him. I'm amazed at how it softened him in his response to me. I've prayed for years that my husband would love me and speak my love language. But when I begin to speak his language, then he responds with what I wanted. Do you hear that? She started, you made the choice. She feels like, I'm going to be the mature one. I'm going to take the initiative. She begins to minister respect to him. And all of a sudden she finds he's beginning to show love back to her, as she's been longing for years. This next lady had 2, what she calls major fights with her husband, which saw them locked into the crazy cycle. Apparently for a 6-month period they hardly talked to each other. It's pretty bad. And when they did talk, it wasn't too nice. She writes this to Dr. Emerson. The thing that struck me was your comment that a man can feel the loss of respect so deeply but not be able to give voice or vocabulary as to what is wrong. As a man who was not given to voicing his emotions much on a good day, this is her husband, I believe this is how my husband was affected. He was able to tell me I'd pushed him too hard, but I didn't understand what button I'd pushed. As a result, a lot of my efforts to reach out over the last 6 months backfired. So on New Year's Eve, I left a card in his lunchbox. Nothing mushy, just a, you give me many reasons to smile message, to which I added, and many reasons about you I respect. Then I said, a thanks for Christmas and a Happy New Year. The next day, he got up from the table and brought a chair to me. This last Sunday, he suggested going to a movie in the evening. He sat and talked before the movie started, proposing going to a musical in the town next week. In general, he has been much more open and communicative. While it will be simplistic and untrue to say all our problems are magically solved, there is a bridge between us that did not exist a week ago. I've yet to hear the L word from his lips, but his actions are such that I know it still exists in his heart. And I intend, with God's help, to fan the flame as much as possible. 2 real simple things, love and respect. She needs love, he needs respect. And in this book, there are some incredibly practical things we can do. Men, to show our wives we love them. Incredibly practical things we can do, ladies, to show our husbands we respect them. And I'll touch on a few of those next week. The second part today of she needs love and he needs respect. One of the one-liners that people say sometimes at weddings and that, just to get a good laugh, they say, men and women are different, and we all chuckle. We look at each other, yeah, we're so different. And I think marriage and even dating and relationships, close friendships with the other gender, brings out all sorts of issues in us because we look at the world differently and we see the world differently, we interpret it differently. I began to share last week from this book by Dr. Emerson Eggerichs. He needs respect, she needs love. And just freshly aware that just as a woman needs unconditional love, he would say that a man needs unconditional respect. And that's not something that's always pushed out there. In fact, our media, our TV programs, our cartoons in particular, really put men up as being idiots, foolish people to be laughed at, brainless, and the ladies being the only sensible ones. Now, our ladies are sensible, our ladies are wonderful, but the idea that puts men down and dishonours men in this culture, I think is offensive to how men were made and God's design for men. And in this church, we don't want men to be like women or women to be like men. We want women to be women and men to be men, and to be men and women for God together. Researchers have confirmed what the Bible teaches, that men need to feel respected in life generally and especially in their home. A wife's respect for a husband will do so much for his sense of self-worth and what he can achieve in life. Ephesians chapter 5 verse 33 was our verse from last week. So each husband should love his wife as much as he loves himself. And each wife should respect her husband. Both of them given as commands in Scripture. Not it would be a good idea, blokes, if you loved your wives, or ladies, not if it's a good idea when he's earned it, respect your husband. But it's an unconditional love we're commanded to give to our wives, an unconditional respect we're to give to our husbands. These two attitudes and relationships won't solve any problem, but they'll go a huge way to breaking the crazy cycle. You know the crazy cycle we spoke about last week? She loves him so much, something isn't quite right in the relationship. So she wants him to sit down and she wants him to talk about it. She wants him to get it sorted. And to her, it's really, really important because the whole world's affected by it. And so she sits him down and he's feeling a bit corded. And she raises her voice and strains her face and a couple of words come out maybe not the best way. She's doing that because she loves him and just wants it sorted now because it means so much to her. But he's listening to that going, crikey, I'm stuck in a corner, and she's raising her voice and she's screwing up her face and she called me that. And he's interpreting that as disrespect. And so he thinks, flip, I just want to get out of the room, and he doesn't know what to say or feel. He doesn't know how a lady thinks, and he's feeling very inadequate for his words, and so he just begins to shut down and look for a way out. And she looks at that and goes, how unloving, how horrible, how unkind, and the cycle continues. And we spoke last week about the need in a relationship, you know, whether it's male-female friends or whether it's male-female marriage especially, the need in a relationship to be willing not to say, I'm going to sort this out when he does his bit or when she does her bit, but because I love God, because God commands it, I'm going to break the crazy cycle. I'm going to love my wife even if she's not respecting me. I'm going to respect my husband even if he's not loving me, the wives would say. That's the biblical model from Ephesians chapter 5, verse 33. This week I want to get really practical. What does love look like, you know, to a lady? And what does respect look like to a bloke? So we can know how to serve each other and meet each other's needs. We're going to use two acronyms this morning. The word couple for the ladies to remember, for the men to remember, and the word chair for the ladies to remember. Couple and chair. And if you're following with me in your sermon outline and your notes, just really helpful things. Even if you've got the best marriage, you know, and you have one argument every 6 years or something, still put this down because it will help your kids and it'll help your grandkids too. C in couple stands for closeness. How do you give your wife the love that she desires? She desires closeness. Women are created to desire spiritual and emotional closeness with others. Being close to your wife will cost you nothing, men, except time and love. Your wives will feel close to you when you make eye contact, when you hold her hand, when you hug her or show affection without sexual intentions. They feel close to you when you make it a priority to spend time together, when you let her know you value her opinions and thoughts, when you do the unexpected, when you take time to talk after intimate times together. Women need to feel close to their men, and there's lots of practical things. Guys, to show your girls love in this way. The second thing they need is openness. O in couple stands for openness. Women want their relationships to be always sorted, and so naturally they want to get things out on the table and they want to talk it through until it's sorted between the husband and wife. Men, on the other hand, often hold their cards close to their chests. They talk only when they've got things worked out. A bloke tends to think, I need time to think about this, process this while I'm mowing the lawns, working in the garage, and when I've got some answers to the situation, then I want to talk. But a lady needs openness all the time from their husbands. Men, your wives need you to really make an effort to be open with them. Tell her about your days, its difficulties and its high points. Ask her what she's feeling. Ask her for her opinions. Let your body language communicate to her that you want to talk to her. Take her for a walk and talk over the problems you may be having with her kids. Give her your full attention. No grunting, please, while you're trying to watch TV. Discuss with her your financial concerns, possible job changes and ideas for the future. I've often observed this openness thing in a cafe. You walk past a cafe and they have those little round tables. Now, blokes, when they're sitting at a coffee table having a coffee together, are kind of slightly at an angle, like 45 degrees to each other. Ladies, when they're having a coffee together, they're facing each other and they're almost leaning over the tables, reading every expression, every little bit of body language. We're just so different. But women need that openness from us men. It doesn't come naturally, but that's what they're looking for. That's part of being loved. You in couples stands for understanding. Don't try to fix her problems or to fix her. Just go out of your way to listen. She'll feel loved by you if she comes to think of you as a burden bearer, her man with big shoulders. When she comes to you for understanding, her action is really a big compliment. Don't shut her down or shut her out. Take time to try and understand her, and she will feel really loved. I never said this to Juliet, but I've heard other men say this to their wives when their wives are a bit concerned or a bit stressed. I've heard a bloke saying, honey, do you want my solution or do you want my ear? That's really clever. I've never done it. I must try it one day. But, you know, when their wives are really concerned, they're trying to find out. Are you just wanting me to listen? Or do you want me an answer right now? And the blokes will ask it up front. I've heard men do it. And it's incredibly wise. You demonstrate your love by understanding when you're actively listening. When you try to identify her feelings. When you never dismiss her feelings, no matter how illogical they are. Do you hear that, blokes? You know, we've got a tendency to say, you shouldn't be that upset about this little thing. We can't do that if we want our wives to feel understood, if we want our wives to feel loved. When you don't interrupt her when she's trying to tell you how she feels. When you apologise and admit you were wrong. When you cut her some slack during the monthly cycle. When you pray for her and with her. Those things will make her feel understood. Those things will make her feel that even though you're wired differently, men, that you're making a real effort to understand her. P in couple stands for peacemaking. 1 Corinthians 7:28 says, those who marry will have trouble. That's quite a profound verse in the Bible. There's going to be trouble. Men and women are different. You're going to hear things differently. You're going to have some trouble in your marriage. Some will be your doing. Some will be the fact that it's just that you're different. She wants to hear you say, I'm sorry. Men, when we have a barney with our mates, and ladies, try and understand this. When a bloke has an argument with a man at work or somebody in a professional role or a good friend in the sporting club, what men tend to do is just put it all out there, tell it like it is, here's the facts, we offload, then we walk away. Well, I've said what I need to say, the situation's dealt with. That's how men think. They don't feel they've got to come back and say, are we okay now, mate? Are we still friends? No, we've put it out there, it's offloaded, we've finished. Our wives, men, are very, very different. Our wives want to hear us say, I'm okay. I'm still in love with you. We're all sorted now. Our wives need to hear us say sorry. With a mate, you don't have to do that. With a mate, you just put it out there and say, oh, I disagree. Here are my facts. You walk away. Next time you see each other, you don't bring it up again. For a lady, she needs to know that the relationship's put right. She needs to know that it's settled. So those words like, we're okay. I love you. I'm sorry. Are just so important. A paraphrase of Proverbs 15, verse 1 goes like this. A gentle, loving answer turns away wrath, especially your wives. Not my paraphrase. She will know your love for her when you let her vent her frustrations and hurt without closing off to her. Guys, stand there. That's what love is. Love is a strong thing. And when our wives are emotional, when the ladies in our lives, it might be your daughters, might be your mother-in-law, when they're emotional, they need you to stand your ground and just listen and care for them. It's part of being loving, and it's part of being strong as a man. She'll know that you love her when you admit you're wrong and say, I'm sorry, will you forgive me? When you understand her desire to negotiate and compromise for genuine peace and meet her halfway. When you try to keep your relationship up to date, resolving the unresolved and never saying forget it. When you forgive her wrongs. When you never nurse bitterness and reassure her of your love. Those peacemaking things will communicate to her that she's loved. L in couple stands for loyalty. Ladies need to know that their men are committed to them. They need to know that you're loyal to them. When your wife says to your man, honey, will you love me when I'm old and grey? When they say to you, and they will you love me if I get Alzheimer's? Will you love me if I, this or that goes wrong? That is not an opportunity to make a joke, guys. That is not an opportunity to talk about trade-ins or anything else like that. Our women are not wired for those kind of jokes. When your wife says, will you love me when I'm old and grey, you look her in the eyes, just squeeze her hand and say, absolutely, girl. you know, and don't mess around with your response at those times. They need to know that they know that they know that you're loyal to them, that you're a priority to them. She's not wired for the bloke's sense of humour, and it's dangerous at those times. She will be assured of your loyalty when you speak highly of her in front of others, when you help her make decisions, especially the ones about the children, when you don't look lustfully at other women as you drive past, when you correct the kids if they talk disrespectfully of her, when you keep your commitments, when you speak positively of her at all times. Those things speak of loyalty. And man, our wives need to know that we're loyal to them. E in couple stands for esteem. She wants you to value her. Guys, when your wife brings up an issue in your marriage, it's because she wants it sorted out. It's because she really, really wants to be right with you, the number one person in her life. She's not saying she wants to control you. She's not saying that she wants to be the boss. She's saying, this relationship's so important, I'm not going to let it go. We need to talk, and you need to hear it that way. One very successful female CEO in America wrote this of her husband. And it's incredible. This lady is a highly successful, dynamic, very, very wealthy businesswoman. She said this about her life. At the end of the day, all that's important to me is to know that he loves me and values me. That's what I want more than anything else. So she's got business success, she's got esteem, prestige, and she's, you know what? Just want to know my man loves me. That's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome. Men, our wives carry out children in their wombs for 9 months before they give birth. That's why they never forget birthdays. I've worked that out. You know, they take a long time coming up to that birth and they never forget. Little girls, I get so scared of birthdays, friends. I've forgotten my own so many times in the years gone by. Little girls, when they're growing up, one of the things they do as they're growing up is they dress up as brides, don't they? And so they'll never forget. It's so much of the expectation of a little girl growing up that one day she'll be married, so they won't forget their wedding anniversary. Guys need to make use of these occasions to show how much we really value our girls and show a high opinion of them, express a high opinion of them. I read a true story of a lady who received 2 gifts from her husband on her birthday. This is true. This lady's probably late 50s, very successful businessman, and on her birthday he gave her 2 presents. The first present was a Mercedes-Benz. The second present was a poem he wrote on a nice piece of paper in a cafe saying how much he loved her. When he died, you know which present she spoke about to people all the time? The note. That's crazy. She spoke about the note, not the Mercedes-Benz. You know, she needs to know just how highly you esteem her. And those personal expressions are worth absolute gold to your relationship. They're such a good investment in your relationship. Tell her how proud you are of her and the way that she handles situations. Speak highly, men, of your wives in front of others. Make her feel like the most important person, even if it means you've got to give up some guy time and give up doing some man things to express that, to demonstrate that to her. Men, remember couple. Ladies, to show your respect for men, remember the acronym CHEERS. Ladies, how do you give your husband and the men in your life the respect that they really want? C in CHEERS stands for conquest. Please appreciate his desire to work and achieve. There's a natural born instinct in men, and you'll see it in little boys with their guns and their tree climbing and all their battles that they have when they're 4 or 5 years old. Something in the male DNA says, I need to go out into the world, I need to face challenges, I need to conquer the challenges. And the number one place that natural desire, this desire for conquest is expressed for a bloke is his work. Our work is incredibly important because that's the place where you achieve. That's the place where you make conquests. And it's so much a part of a man's self-esteem and identity. When a man is not in work, and I've been in that situation, it rattles your self-esteem something terrible because your work is your identity. And I would always say to men, and it happens to many, many good men, if you're made redundant, something goes wrong, do voluntary stuff. Don't sit at home because that'll mess with your head, it'll mess with your self-esteem. Get busy doing things for God, even if it's voluntary. It's interesting. When 2 men meet for the first time, you know what one of the first questions they'll ask each other is? Yeah, what do you do for a job? Ladies never ask that. Why? Then that's not a bad thing, because we're all about conquest. We're all about achieving goals, achieving challenges and getting through them. And ladies, you have a huge ability to help your man do well. I will never forget, this has happened to me multiple times in life, but I will never forget my first year at Carey College. I'd been halfway through the year. I'd failed the Old Testament paper miserably. I'd got like 51% in other papers, you know. And I was called in before the college board where they're training ministers for, you know, for ministry. And there's a group of about 8 people in that room, and Brian Smith and my wife and I were sitting on the opposite side of this big group of people. And the principal looked me in the face and he said, "Russell, do you really think you got what it takes to be able to get through a degree? Russell, do you really think you should be here? Maybe you just haven't got the skills, the intelligence to do tertiary level study at this level." Now, I was thinking that anyway. You know, I was thinking, like, I feel cool, but man, this is hard. And I find it so hard to sit still and all those things that go with study, you know. And I was wondering the same thing. My little 5'4" wife, or whatever she is, my little lady beside me almost got all offended. And she pipes up and she says, "My boy, my husband, my Russell, he can pass this and he can do it really well. He's really, really intelligent. And he can get through the studies and he'll get a degree and he'll be a really good pastor." I didn't know that was coming. You know the effect that had on me, believing that my little lady believed I could conquer a challenge that I was struggling with? Profound effect. In my third year, now bear in mind I had a very small year group, I became the top achiever of the whole year group, you know. Now, would it have happened? I was thinking, hey, I don't know if I should be here. I might be too dumb for this. My lady says, "Russell, you can do it. You can conquer. You can get through this." And my whole world changed because of the power of her words and her belief in me. It was incredible. That's happened multiple times. I remember being asked to speak at a evangelistic conference once, and I was shaking at the knees. I said, "Oh, crikey, I'm Russell from Ranui. Should I do that?" Straight in goes Julie, "Of course you can. You know, you've got something to share, something of value," and my confidence level goes up. And she helps me conquer in life. Always appreciate your man's desire to work. You know, ladies, it's very, very difficult for you to understand that when a man goes to work, that's part of what he needs for his well-being. Work is far more than just earn the money to feed the kids. Work is very, very much about what we need to do as men to get on in life and to feel good about our lives. And as I say, many, many good men nowadays face redundancy, face unemployment. If that's you, just get stuck into something voluntary and be useful for the kingdom in that way. Ladies, you show respect for your man when you tell him you value his efforts for your families, when you listen to his work stories, when you help him achieve his goals, when you allow him to dream, and when you don't criticise his work efforts. H in chair stands for honour. Appreciate his desire to protect and to provide. It's interesting, when you read Ephesians chapter 5 as a bloke, it's common sense. A lady reads Ephesians 5, and husbands, be willing to die for your wives. And they think, heavens, that's pretty extreme. When a man reads Ephesians 5 and it says, love your wives and be willing to die for them, us blokes go, that's common sense. That's common sense. Of course you'd die for your wife. Of course you'd die for your kids. You don't even think about that. When the Titanic was going down, they didn't have a discussion and some men saying, oh, we want to go on the boats. No, all the men on the ship on the Titanic, I bet, I wasn't there, but I bet the men were going, get the girls in, get our wives and get our kids on the boat first. That's how men are wired. And so there's something very honourable about the male DNA, the male character, that would say, I'm willing to do what it takes for the benefit of my family, you know. I'm willing even to lay down my life to protect and provide for my family. Now, I don't believe in going to other countries and attacking people. I don't. But if somebody attacked my family, I'd turn into a wild man. I really would, you know, because it's in your DNA and it's what you do. You look after your kids. You look after your wife. You make sure they're protected. It's the way that we're wired. There's a story about a wife's honour of her husband. He was training to be a doctor. She didn't want to criticise his desire to provide and to protect her. True story. It happened a number of years ago. This guy's training to be a doctor. He's borrowing money. They're living on virtually nothing. They're a newly married couple, no children. And he comes home from his studies one day, and the house is dark, and the candles are burning on the dining table. He thinks, oh, that's nice. But he goes to turn the light switch on in the lounge, and it doesn't work. He goes to turn the light switch on in the kitchen, it doesn't work. He goes to turn the light switch on the toilet, it doesn't work. Now his wife, instead of getting in his face and saying, you should be a better provider, you should be working more, earning more money, his wife in the story actually turned to him and said, honey, we can't afford the power this month, but that's okay, because we have candlelit dinners for the rest of the month. She didn't criticise his ability to provide, which is such a crucial thing for a bloke. She just did her best, with the situation, and still honoured her husband. You show your husband respect when you verbalise your admiration for him, for protecting you and being willing to die for you. When you never in a word or body language put down his job or how much he earns, you're showing him respect. When you respectfully discuss financial concerns with humble suggestions about what you and other family members can do to help, you're showing respect. A in Cheers stands for appreciate his desires to serve. Men may not be as good with words as you ladies are, but men will look for practical ways to show love. The kid's bike needs fixing, we fix it. Tree needs cutting down, we cut it down. We do stuff around the place to show love. Now, to a woman, it's not the same as a heart-to-heart conversation. That's what she would love, to show love. But ladies, recognise that when your hubby's running around doing that stuff, he's actually doing his best in a very blokey sort of way to serve you and to serve the family. It's interesting. When you affirm his desire to serve the family, you do so much for self-esteem. Now, in this church, I've had that from lots of people other than my wife. I always want to be a pastor. I don't care if people outside around know me or not. I just want to see people saved. I want to love people. And I'll never forget, Ronnie, where are you sitting? Ronnie, I'll just embarrass you for a moment, without your permission. About 4 years ago, we went through a really tough time in the church. And I'm sure I made mistakes and did things right and wrong, But I'll never forget walking out of here during that tough time when there were issues. And Ronnie, my sister, felt that I was just humbly serving, being faithful through the issues. I walked out of here, I walked into the cafe, and Ronnie looked me in the face, and she says, Russell, God's given you big shoulders. And it was funny because you won't remember it, Ronnie. I do. But here's the thing. As a bloke, it's kind of like saying, I respect the way you serve. It's kind of like saying, I like the way that you just humbly serve. 4 times in this church, senior ladies in the church have come up to me and said, Russell, you're a real pastor. And gosh, you know, I think I would always be a pastor. I love being a pastor. You know, and Bev was one of them. Well, embarrassing. Glenys, if she's here. You know, when they said those things, they were kind of affirming my character, which is a blokey character, just to do stuff and to serve people. And it does wonders. When you say to your husband, you know, or you say to the young man in your life, teenager in your home, you know, look, I just appreciate the way you're doing that for the family. You do so much good. It's somehow, the men would still do it anyway, but somehow it releases an energy and a vibrancy within your spirit, which is just so good for us. So appreciate his desire to serve. I in Cheers stands for insight. Appreciate his desire to analyse and counsel. This doesn't come naturally, ladies. A lady wants to be understood. She wants to look at the emotional side. She wants to be listened to. And men are very much wired for problem solving. But appreciate where he's coming from. I actually think that the bloke's ability to look at things analytically, logically, without much emotion being demonstrated, that's kind of the bloke's way of showing empathy. You may not think so, ladies, but it really is. When he's hearing the problems, looking at the situation, saying pretty calmly, without much emotion at all, we could do this and this and this to solve that problem. That's a man's way of showing empathy. In relationships, we often talk about female intuition. That's a wonderful thing. I think it's very real. Sometimes they just know. They just know what the kids need. They just know what's best in the situation. But of equal importance is the male's ability to show insight, to look at the whole scene, look at the problem, you know, from a very analytical, problem-solving perspective and say, you know what, on the basis of all this information, this might be the best way forward. That's a good thing. And when you look at your husband, when you hear your husband speaking about fixing the problems, you know, it's a healthy thing to say, look, I applaud you, husband. I appreciate your husband for your insights, for your practical wisdom in situations. Sometimes applaud him for fixing things and applaud his solutions. Let them know that you believe that God's made us male and female for a purpose, and that we need each other. Thank him for his stability. It's very tempting for our women in the world and in the church to look at our husbands and say, gosh, he's just like that. I wish he was emotional. I wish he was really warm and empathetic. Or I wish he was more excited than men tend to be. Pretty much. And thank him for that, because that brings a stability to the relationship that will truly benefit the relationship. R in chair stands for relationship. And this is where men and women are incredibly different. Appreciate his shoulder-to-shoulder friendship. Now, ladies, men want to talk heart to heart. They want to have the deep, deep conversations and feel like they're connected at the heart level. Men prefer not to look face-to-face across the cafe table. They prefer to talk while they're doing stuff. They prefer shoulder-to-shoulder activities. I've read books and stories of men who talk about their wives, how happy they felt when their wife just came and sat with them in the garage, when their wife just went fishing with them. And they just spent time in their presence. One story I read from this book spoke about one wife who went deer hunting with her husband. This guy was one of those deer hunters that used a bow. One wife decided to go deer hunting with her husband, who uses a bow and arrow. She helped them set up the blind as they both sat there for hours, waiting for a deer to happen by. They saw nothing, they shot nothing, and they said nothing. Finally, they took her down the blind and headed back to the car. To this point, she had not said one word the entire time. As they were walking down the trail, her husband turned to her and said, "That was awesome!" How different are we? How different are we? She wants to talk. He just wants to know his girl's beside him, and he feels respected and loved because she's just hanging out with him, doing his stuff. And I've found with men, if I want to talk to a man about a hard issue, or particularly boys that we're mentoring, that the church mentors a lot of young boys, I will not sit across the table and say, "Let's talk about your feelings, mate. We'll grab a cordless drill. We'll fix something in the church." And while we're doing the shoulder-to-shoulder stuff, I find the blokes will talk to me. Blokes have their best conversations on fishing trips, repairing somebody's roof, repainting a house. And I just understand that. He needs the shoulder-to-shoulder relationship. You're wired for the heart-to-heart. They're both vital. But look at ministering to him. He feels respected when you just want to be beside him, even if you're not saying anything. S in chair stands for sex. Men need sexual intimacy to feel respected. Ladies, your need to be understood emotionally is equal to your husband's need for sexual intimacy. A woman needs to feel loved to want sex, but a man needs to have sex in order to feel loved and secure in a relationship. And that's absolutely normal. Absolutely normal. That's the way God made men and women. When a wife rejects her husband's desire for sex, it can feel like the most rejecting, disrespectful slap in the face you could ever get. Well, she says, "I'm not going to give him sex until he meets my emotional needs." And he's saying, "Well, I'm not going to meet her emotional needs until she looks after my intimacy needs." And the crazy cycle begins, and it takes a grown up, a mature person to say, "You know what, I'm just going to serve this person I'm married to. I'm just going to love him, her unconditionally, respect him unconditionally, and meet their needs." 1 Corinthians 7 verse 5, Paul wrote to husbands and wives and says, "Don't deprive each other of sex except by mutual agreement for a time, so you can devote yourselves to prayer. Then come together again so that Satan will not tempt you because of your lack of self-control." Ladies, your man is much less likely to look at other women or be tempted by porn or an affair if you're meeting his needs, just as he needs to meet your needs emotionally. Men, love your wives. Remember couple and what it stands for. And women, respect your husbands. Remember chairs and what it stands for. 1 Peter 3 verses 1 to 2 even suggests that if a wife is loving an unbelieving husband in a godly way, or a believing husband is loving an unbelieving wife in a godly way, that very attitude can bring the unbeliever to salvation. Incredible. Just do it because God says do it. This is a way to love your spouse, show love unconditionally, show respect unconditionally. And if you do that, even the unbelieving spouse can be won to the kingdom through the power of doing that, serving your spouse in that way. Men, if you give to your wives the love they need, and women, if you give to your men the respect they need, consider what you're modeling to your children and what legacy you'll be passing on to them. "But I can't until she," and "oh, I can't until he." No, the reason you serve your spouse, the reason you wake up and say, I'm going to love this lady, I'm going to respect this man, is because God is the Lord of your life. And that's the way God wants you to live. And nowhere more than a relationship of marriage will all the issues of the heart be brought to the surface, as in a marriage. And so is it going to be difficult? Yes. The Bible says those who are married will have trouble. It's true. Hopefully less and less as the years go on. But you can overcome the world. You can overcome the patterns of this world. You can overcome the natural tendencies of human nature by men loving your wives, couple. By ladies just respecting your husbands unconditionally. Cheers. I believe when you do that by faith and a love for Christ, God will turn up. The Holy Spirit will turn up and you will change the future. We're going to close this morning by reading a prayer. Sounds very high Anglican, but have a look in your newsletters, guys. The prayer together at the end of the sermon notes. Just take 20 seconds to read through it. Then I'm going to get you to stand and we're going to close by saying this together. Would you stand with me, please? It's interesting. Can a man show unconditional love to his wife? No, he can't. Can a wife show unconditional respect to her husband? No, she can't, except God. Except for God. Let's pray this together. Lord Jesus, we need you. We cannot show love and respect perfectly, but you do. And you can today if we allow you to work through us. Help us assume the best of each other's motives and actions, forgiving each other daily and working to deal with issues in ways that communicate to each other what it is that our spouse needs to hear. Ultimately, Lord, it's about our relationship to you. We want you to know that we love you by the way we obey your commands, even when it seems hard and unfair. None of us are victims. We are all free to choose our responses. We believe that when we obey you, that all things are possible. May the responses that we choose to make in all our relationships bring honor to your holy name. Amen. Lord, bless and keep you wonderful people. May his grace and favor be upon you. May his peace and presence surround you throughout this week as you serve him and as you love those other people in your life that God's called you to love and to respect. Bless you.